So here's a question for you. When you're in any group, how can you really tell who's genuinely spiritual and who's, maybe just going through the motions? Well, we're about to dive into a fascinating theological framework that claims to have the answer. And believe it or not, it all hinges on the meaning packed inside just one single powerful verse.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at what this dividing line actually is. Then we'll jump into some really dramatic stories that are used as proof. From there, we'll get into the 4 specific signs of division to watch out for, explore how this splits people into 2 distinct groups, and finally, we'll see what the ideal picture of unity looks like according to this view.
All right, first up, the dividing line. Let's get right to the heart of the problem that this whole framework is trying to solve.
So it all starts with this fundamental question. How do you tell the difference? How do you distinguish someone who is truly being led by the Spirit from someone who isn't? According to this teaching, you don't look for the usual outward signs. Nope, you're supposed to look for something else entirely.
And boom, here it is. This single verse from the book of Jude is the key to the whole thing. The argument from the source is simple but powerful. The number one sign of someone who doesn't have the Spirit is that they're the one causing division. They're the ones who create the splits in a group.
Now this is where we have to understand a really important term, carnal. The source describes this as being worldly or even animal-like. It's about being led by your natural instincts and impulses, not by something higher like the Holy Spirit. It's a state of being grounded in the physical, the earthly.
So this is the really critical takeaway, right? Conflict isn't just a simple disagreement. No, in this framework, it's something way bigger. It's like a moment of truth. When that division happens, it's like a litmus test that suddenly makes everything clear, showing you exactly who is spiritual and who is carnal.
Now this isn't just some abstract idea. The source material points to some incredibly dramatic stories from the Old Testament, presenting them as historical evidence of this very dividing line at work. First up, we've got the story of Moses versus a man named Korah. Now what's fascinating is they were from the same tribe. But Moses was God's chosen leader. He represents the spiritual side. Korah, on the other hand, challenged him, creating a huge division. He represents the carnal.
And this whole thing came to a head with a dramatic challenge. Moses basically puts it all on the line. He says, look, if these guys just die a normal death, then I'm a fraud. But if the ground literally opens up and swallows them whole, then you'll know who really went against God. And the outcome? It was absolutely terrifying. The story goes that the earth split open and swallowed Korah and everyone with him. For this theological framework, this is Exhibit A. It's the ultimate example of how division, born from rebellion, leads to total destruction.
The second example follows the exact same pattern, but this time with Abraham's sons. You have Isaac, the son of a divine promise, he's the spiritual one. Then there's Ishmael, born of natural means, he's the carnal. The friction between them and the fact that they eventually had to be separated is seen as another clear case of this fundamental divide.
Okay, so if causing a division is the big red flag for being carnal, what are the behaviors that actually lead up to it? Well, the source material identifies a very specific 4-step pattern.
So the source lays out this 4-step road to division. It's almost like a recipe, It kicks off with grumbling. That's the first hint of trouble. Then that grumbling gives way to acting on selfish desires, my way over God's way. That fire gets fueled by pride, that I know better attitude that just won't listen to authority. And the whole thing ends in unbelief, a total rejection of the message and the people delivering it.
So when you put all this together, you get to the core conclusion of this framework, that humanity isn't really on a spectrum. Instead, it's divided into 2 fundamentally different and maybe even incompatible kinds of people. And to explain this, the source makes this powerful comparison. You've got the first Adam, made from the dust of the earth. He's earthly, natural. And then you have Christ, who is called the last Adam, who comes from heaven. He's heavenly, spiritual. This right here sets up the entire duality. This idea then gets applied to the very nature of our spirit. The source draws a sharp line between what it calls an animal spirit, which is purely physical and just returns to the earth, and a human spirit. And the huge difference? The human spirit is oriented upward, toward God. It worships, it builds. So it all boils down to these stark opposites. You're either heavenly or you're earthly. You're either gathering people together or you're scattering them. You build up or you tear down.
And the final, crucial point in this framework is that these two types of people, well, they can never truly mix.
Okay, so if division and scattering are the signs of the carnal, then what's the opposite? What does the ideal spiritual group actually look like?
Well, to paint that picture, the source material gives us one last really powerful metaphor: the human body. It's held up as the perfect model for what true spiritual unity is all about. In this verse from Corinthians, just says it all, doesn't it? In a body that's working right, there's zero division. The eye doesn't look at the hand and say, "I don't need you." Every single part is absolutely essential. Every part is valued, and they all work together for the good of the whole. That's the ultimate vision of unity.
And that kind of brings us to the big final question, doesn't it? If, according to this framework, the act of causing a split is the absolute clear sign of being carnal, then what does that really mean for unity? What does true spiritual unity actually demand from every single person in the group? It's a pretty heavy thought to end on.